September of 2022, I was wandering around my school's campus with an old camera I had picked up at a flea market. I was trying to take some interesting looking photos, and at some point I decided to enter an elevator, in which I found a floor I'd never been to before. Basement. Maybe it was just because of the mood I was in, or maybe it was the lack of people, but for whatever reason, the basement just felt odd. I was wandering around. It was a few hours after classes had ended. I was relatively certain that apart from somebody practicing piano on the top floor, I was one of the only people in the building. All I could really hear were the natural background sounds you don't usually listen to, like the elevator door closing behind me, or my footsteps echoing down the hallway as I walked. The place just made me kind of nervous, and since I had that old camera with me, I took it out and started to record myself as I explored. And I naturally started to really freak myself out with it. I tried to imagine the scariest things could possibly happen. The elevator breaks. All the stairways that lead out are locked. This is a pretty remote area of the school, and I know that no one's going to really come down here for the next few days until class starts again on Monday. But then again, that's how long it takes to die of thirst. How long am I going to be stuck down here? My flashlight dies, then my camera goes, the lights in the hallway already don't work, then I start to hear sounds. I first think they're the pipes, but they slowly get louder, stranger, and I'm stuck. I got nowhere to go, and all I'm really left with is the dim green glow of the exit signs. As I imagined this whole situation unfolding, I couldn't help but start to pretend that it was actually happening to me, and it really got under my skin. I was terrified, but also at the same time kind of excited, because that whole situation I'd imagined and all the fear that came with it had just been caught on camera. It sat on my camera for a while, then I added some sounds and put it in iMovie, edited it together, then I was done. Each video took more setup than the last. They steadily got more elaborate, and over time, people started to ask a lot of questions as to how I did some of this stuff. So in this video, there are a few elements I wanted to address. One of the questions I've been asked the most is how I seemingly had control over the school's fire alarm system. And the answer to that question is actually pretty simple. I never did. In the final video, titled Emergency Exit, I used a strobe light set to its lowest setting and just placed it throughout the building in various cuts, and then added the sound of the alarm afterwards. Those few seconds at the very end, when I'm outside and look back at the main building and you see all the alarms going off, was actually the product of a very conveniently timed fire drill. I was recording the second to last video. I'd already had the alarm sequence planned out by this point, then completely out of nowhere, the fire alarm starts going off. I know it's just a drill, and as I was making my way out, I decided to turn around, get a few seconds of footage, and those sat pretty much unused on my camera for a few months, until the time came to use them in the finale.
That fire alarm switch I pulled in episode 3 was never actually connected to anything. I was given permission to take it by the school's maintenance staff after they finished this old renovation project. There are a lot of unused construction materials, and among the things they were discarding was this fire alarm still in the box.
I was able to take that back to the shop, tear all the electronics out the back, which left me with just this flat metal surface, and then use a loop of Gorilla Tape to literally tape this heavy fire alarm to the wall. Another aspect of this series that seems complicated but is actually quite simple is the sound. I'll admit that the sounds of the monster in the first two videos are more afterthoughts than anything else. Immediately after I finished recording the videos, I'd turn on the lights and just use whatever I could find nearby to make sounds that, while not necessarily scary on their own, would be terrifying to hear echoing down the dark, seemingly empty hallway. I did a ton of different things to make new sounds for each video, and most of the time it was something really simple, like dropping random objects on the floor or running my fingernails along a metal banister somewhere. But eventually I found two sounds that really stuck out to me. The first of these sounds was which is essentially just me running the backs of my fingernails across the wires in an open piano. I did not expect it to come out that scary. The second sound, which turned up a bit later, was made with a music stand. I placed the thing on the floor and extremely lightly pushed it either backwards or forwards, and it would make this god-awful scraping sound as it went across the tiles. believe it or not, a lot of the audio mixing here was actually done with iMovie presets. There were some audio settings here and there that allow you to make sounds sound like they're echoing from like a large room or a cathedral. And in this series, it was extremely effective at making sounds feel like they're coming far away when in reality they were recorded right next to the camera. For the more physical parts of the monster, like the tendrils seen growing from above the ceiling in a few episodes, all I really did was use some paracord and some red electrical wire. I'd tie it to a pipe above the ceiling somewhere, usually a sprinkler pipe, and then secure it to the wall using clear packaging tape. This tape actually proved to be somewhat annoying because it would reflect my flashlight in many of the shots, and I'd oftentimes be down there for like a half hour to an hour just recording that one like 2-second clip over and over, trying to get a single shot where the tape doesn't reflect in an abundantly obvious way.
Saw the tape reflect.
The blood seen during some of the deaths was, for the most part, just a quick coat of stage blood. I opted for the syrup-based stuff that's meant to stick to the skin rather than drip, mainly because the more liquidy kind was a bit more expensive and only came in these really big jugs that I didn't really have space for and didn't need. I put in a bit more effort for the last episode and decided to incorporate some liquid latex. This worked pretty well and made some scenes, like pulling that tendril out, look genuinely painful. The only problem is the latex didn't match my skin tone perfectly. It's kind of expensive to get it matched, and unless it was shown from an extremely specific angle, it looked extremely obvious that I just painted something onto my skin. I think it took me 3 days to get the angle right to actually hide the discrepancy there. Some of the scenes where I went out of bounds, so to speak, like when I was above the ceiling or in the crawl space or even on top of the elevator, were actually filmed in entirely different locations in the rest of the series. When the last frame of one clip matches the first frame of another, it makes them look like they're just one continuous video. I use that editing trick a lot in the scene where I climb up on top of the elevator. There wasn't even an actual ceiling hatch there, I just made it seem like there was. When I brought the camera close to the ceiling, I'd aim my flashlight away, resulting in pitch darkness, and then add the sounds of the hatch being opened in post. From there, I'd stop recording, move to an elevator I had a bit more access to in a whole separate building, and then start recording the scenes that take place on top from there, all while making it seem like it's on the same elevator. I had a really wonderful time making this series. I definitely don't plan to stop making videos now that this first one's over. I have a few ideas for the next one bouncing around, nothing's final yet, and I don't want to reveal too much, but I think some of them have real promise. I should be able to step things up a lot now that I've got some experience under my belt. I'm also considering releasing a few one-off horror shorts in the meantime, probably found footage, while I work on the next series, so definitely stay tuned for those. They should come out a lot faster than usual, because they'll take a bit less than a few months to make. I can't possibly thank you all enough for your feedback and support, seriously. Your comments really kept me going. This series was an entirely solo venture, and working on it alone really dragged at times, especially with some of the more complicated scenes towards the end. It wasn't entirely unusual for me to spend up to a week recording and editing a scene that, in the end, was only a few seconds long. I found myself considering scrapping some really cool ideas in the interest of making things easier, but when I did that, I looked back at your comments and they'd encouraged me to keep going, and look at the result. I was able to achieve so much more than I thought I was capable of, and seriously, thank you all so much. I'm looking forward to making some more stuff in the future. I'll see you all then.